Most of us enjoy a good scary movie as long as we're able to convince ourselves at the end that it was nothing but a work of fiction. But while most terrifying events on screen are based on nothing but a good imagination, there are a few that are based on real-life events. All of the houses you'll hear about today are ones where spiritual beings have decided not to move on and have instead decided to haunt the current owners right up until present day. Make sure to stick around until the end to hear about the real-life houses that feature in the movie The Conjuring. Before we terrify you with some of these eye-openingly scary properties, make sure to like this video, subscribe to TheRichest, and join our notification squad. Now let's get into famous, terrifying haunted houses that still exist to this day. You might think you're tougher than most, but you'll almost definitely find yourself terrified when you come face to face with a Neibolt house, the creepy haunted house that features in the It movie. The facade was built in an abandoned lot in Oshawa, Ontario, and was considered creepy even before the production designer got to work. The house was filled with weird safety devices and metal doors combined with traditional Victorian features. In the movie, this rotting old house in suburban Toronto is where the children known collectively as the Losers Club discover the evil that lurks all around them. The basement of this house was even worse. It was filled with crazy paintings of moms with their babies and little squirrels and any number of decaying features. And if that didn't put you off of visiting this property, wait until you hear the next part. When the set designers ripped apart some of the metal doors, frames, and walls to prepare for filming, they found a note. It said you should not have moved all that, which scared the producers into thinking they could end up cursed. Our next haunted house is another eerily Victorian property, but this time we're journeying over to Cleveland, Ohio. Are you ready to explore Franklin Castle? While some creepy properties might just be scary from years of storytelling, Franklin Castle has a gruesome past that many think reflects its present-day demeanor. At least 4 people disappeared at the castle in the past, although none of the deaths have been connected to foul play. A 15-year-old girl was one to pass away at the property along with 3 other children. Their parents, Hans Tiedemann and his wife Louise, were known as being kind and generous people. But eyebrows were raised when Hans's mother passed away, and then Louise did too. But that didn't stop people taking an interest in the house. Actress Judy Garland's last husband, Michael DeVinco, was at one time one of the castle's owners amongst various other thrill seekers. Nowadays, the castle usually always hits the top 10 most haunted houses in the country because of the consistent strange occurrences. If you wander through the house, there's a high chance you'll hear voices, watch doors open, and notice objects moving around. The radio might spontaneously turn on, or you might place something down only to find it in an entirely different room the next day. It's clear that whichever spirits remain on this property are not very happy at all. You might find it distressing to visit a house that's haunted by its previous occupants, but how would you feel if you actually purchased such a house? If you've watched TV series American Horror Story, you might know which property we're talking about next. This Los Angeles mansion was purchased by Ernst von Schwartz and Pierre A. Oakenfeld in 2015 for a cool $3.2 million. You might wonder their intentions since the property definitely has a bit of a spooky air surrounding it. But apparently they weren't aware of its spiritual nature, nor the fact that it was often visited as a sort of unusual tourist attraction by people far and wide. The Murder House appeared in the first season of American Horror Story, as well as Roanoke Hotel and the current season Apocalypse. Now the current owners are suing the previous owners for not telling them that the house is supposedly haunted in real life, not just on screen. They claim that although the previous owner did mention the significant deterioration and decay, they seemingly forgot to mention the unwanted guests that pop up every so often. You've got to wonder what their intentions were when buying the house in the first place. Let's stick with American Horror Story for a minute, because this series has certainly done its research when it comes to profiling some truly terrifying properties. Next up is the LaLaurie house, a New Orleans-based mansion with a heinous past. This property was owned by Madame LaLaurie, a woman who became infamous as the cruel mistress of the haunted house. She was born in 1787 to a large, wealthy, and politically powerful family who were known for keeping people in cruel conditions. This Madame lived a life surrounded by controversy. Her first two husbands mysteriously passed away, and her third drove her mad until she eventually kicked him out. Rumors spread locally that Madame LaLaurie was taking her anger out by harming others, and eventually someone was found fatally injured. On the morning of April 10, 1834, a huge fire broke out at the property, revealing that there were 7 more people who'd been locked away in the house. They had been living upstairs. For almost 200 years since, there have been reports of paranormal activity coming from this house. So it's probably no surprise that it made the cut for American Horror Story Coven, which starred Kathy Bates as the 19th century socialite. Okay, so you'd think that a terrifying exterior would be enough to put you off of visiting a haunted house. But what if the house looked perfectly normal from the outside? That's the exact problem with the Winchester house in California. Surrounded by palm trees, blue skies, and freshly cut grass, this property looks like it could feature in any number of American high school sitcoms. However, this house's history is actually edged with tragedy, mystery, and a high chance of angry spirits. Many people connected to the house found themselves suffering, including the mastermind behind the design of the house, who had heart failure and a young child. There are also many odd features in the design, from the staircases that lead to nowhere to a dangerous door on the second floor that opens out into nothing except a large drop. The freaky nature of this house has not been lost in popular culture. It's found fame in Nuka World, an extension pack for video game Fallout 4, as well as a setting in various novels, and it even has its own feature-length movie, Winchester, featuring Helen Mirren, which was released in 2018. What you might have noticed by now is that it's usually rich people who purchase these haunted mansions, and as a result, it's these people who suffer a sad ending. And our next house, Kreischer Mansion on Staten Island in New York, is no exception. Balthazar Kreischer came to Staten Island in the mid-1800s and brought with him a successful brickworks business. He built the local area up to the extent that it eventually became known as Kreischerville. He built twin mansions atop Kreischer Hill for 2 of his sons and then sadly passed a year later. Shortly after, the family brick factory burnt to the ground and was never rebuilt. The family fortune fell apart and one of the sons came to an unfortunate end. While one of the mansions was also destroyed during the Great Depression, the other became the target of local superstition, and all manner of ghost stories involving strange voices and lights grew in popularity. In 2005, another gruesome crime involving a mafia boss took place on the property, which didn't help the haunted rumors. Nowadays, you might recognize it as a location on television shows including HBO's Boardwalk Empire. Many of the haunted houses we've shown you so far have featured in high-profile movies or TV series, but there's one haunted house that's gained attention for a completely different reason. Molly Brown's house, located at 1340 Pennsylvania Street in Denver, Colorado, looked after Molly and her husband JJ so well that they continued to live there long after their deaths. Molly Brown was nicknamed the Unsinkable Molly Brown because she was one of the fortunate people to survive the sinking of the RMS Titanic. She escaped the crash on lifeboat number 6 and was picked up by the ship sent to rescue the survivors, which was called the Carpathia. So Molly was quite well known in the area. Molly and JJ were millionaires and were also well known for their charitable efforts. They had a daughter together who mysteriously disappeared. After the pair separated, Molly stayed in the property until she passed away in 1932. But while her body was removed, her spirit, along with JJ's, has been seen multiple times since. Many people have mentioned cold spots in the house and curtains opening and closing. The ghost of Molly's mother, Joanna Tobin, also apparently lingers in her granddaughter's room. Other figures who'd stayed at Molly Brown's house as guests have also been spotted in ghostly form on the property. And if that was terrifying, wait until you hear about the Perron house. It's actually the house that inspired the horror film The Conjuring. This creepy movie follows the story of the family who suffered through years of ghostly torment at the hands of many spirits. Carolyn and Roger Perron and their 5 daughters moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island in 1971. At first, they noticed moving objects and scraping noises, and then things stepped up a notch. The family discovered that the property had been owned by the same family for 8 generations. Many of them had passed under mysterious circumstances. Bathsheba, the spirit that's most prominent in the movie version of this tale, was the worst of them all. The parents believed that this spirit was tormenting them along with more of its ghostly friends. Beds would rise off the floor and horrible smells would fill the air. Heating equipment in the basement would also fall down without a cause, forcing Roger to venture downstairs and feel a cold, stinking presence behind him. But we can't talk about The Conjuring without mentioning the second movie, The Conjuring 2. Because only 6 years after the Perron family had been tormented by spirits, another family began to experience a similar thing. This time, it took place in a house in Enfield, North London, in England. It was August 1977, and Janet Hodgson, who was 11 at the time, recalled sitting up in bed to see her dresser sliding across her bedroom, and that was only the beginning. The supernatural activity that took place at 284 Green Street has confused the world to such an extent that not only did it mark the storyline for the sequel of The Conjuring, but it also marked its place across books, documentaries, and other movies. The family began to hear knocking coming from all over the house, and lights would flicker, coins would drop out of thin air, and furniture would shift without being touched. When an iron fireplace seemingly ripped itself out of the wall, paranormal investigators from all around the world showed up, desperate to find out the cause. More than 30 people, including neighbors, psychic researchers, and journalists, claimed they saw movement. But skeptics said the poltergeist residing at 284 Green Street was nothing more than a hoax. That's all for famous, terrifying haunted houses that still exist to this day. Can you think of any other creepy properties that should have made this list? Would you dare visit any of them? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.